There comes a moment in every story when the truth rises quietly, almost shyly, from beneath the rubble of broken trust. It does not arrive with thunder or with applause. It comes softly, like dawn slipping through heavy curtains, revealing what darkness tried so desperately to hide. And in that gentle, unassuming light, something becomes undeniable. The one who betrayed you has begun to feel the weight of their own choices, not because you wished it, not because you demanded it, but because the soul cannot outrun what it has sown. You may not know it yet, but somewhere in a quiet room where no one is watching, that person is sitting with the very silence they once forced upon you. The same silence that used to choke your voice now wraps around their conscience. They replay the moment they walked away. They revisit the words they said. They examine the decisions they made as if each one were a stone pressing against their chest. And for the first time they begin to understand the gravity of what they threw away. People often realize too late that a loyal heart is not easily found twice in one lifetime. Regret is a strange companion. It does not appear when life is loud. It waits. It waits until a person is alone with themselves. It waits until the excuses lose their power. It waits until the ego grows tired of pretending, and then it speaks. But it speaks in a language no one can silence. It tells them the truth they tried to bury, that they betrayed someone who was genuine, rare, patient, forgiving, and pure in intention, someone whose presence they assumed would always remain, even after being wounded, someone they misjudged, misused, or misunderstood. What they did not expect was that their betrayal would turn out to be the mirror they could not escape. While you tried to heal, they tried to forget. While you cried quietly at night, they tried to distract themselves with noise. While you fought to rebuild your strength, they worked hard to drown out the voice in their mind, reminding them of the goodness they destroyed. But conscience is not a door one can close forever. It opens at the most unexpected times. There are nights when they lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering why they acted as they did. They search for reasons that once felt so justified, but now feel small, embarrassing, and painfully shallow. They think about the conversations they cut short, the trust they broke, the love or respect they left bleeding on the floor. They think about how you never wished them harm, how you offered sincerity without conditions, how you tried to understand when others would have walked away, and in that reflection, they discover something they refuse to admit. The problem was never your worth, it was their blindness. Regret grows heavier when life begins to return to them what they once sent out. The friends they trusted start showing cracks. The relationships they ran to offer no peace. The comfort they thought they'd gain turns out to be temporary, hollow, or deceptive. And suddenly the memory of you becomes louder, not because they want to come back for convenience, but because now they see what they could not see before. Your loyalty was a shelter, your presence was grounding, your heart was a place of safety they did not appreciate until it was gone. While you rise, they wrestle. While you walk forward, they look backward. While you mend, they unravel. Not because you wished revenge, not because you cursed them, but because life has a way of teaching lessons to those who refuse to learn gently. And the most painful lesson a betrayer ever learns is this: the moment they betrayed you was the moment they cursed their own peace. Now they are beginning to understand that you were not just another person. They betrayed the one soul that truly cared. And that realization, my friend, is heavier than anything you ever carried. A moment arrives in every betrayer's life when the truth they once ignored becomes impossible to escape. It doesn't happen in the presence of others, and it doesn't occur at a time of confidence or joy. It begins quietly, like a soft tapping on a closed door they hoped would never open. At first, they do what they have always done: push the feeling aside, drown it with excuses, silence it with self-justification. But truth is patient. Truth is persistent. Truth has a way of resurfacing no matter how deeply someone tries to bury it. And when truth finally reaches them, it does not scream, it whispers. And yet the whisper cuts deeper than any shout. The one who betrayed you now finds themselves confronted by the very reality they spent so long avoiding. It starts with subtle discomfort, a moment of stillness that suddenly feels heavy, a random memory that refuses to leave, a question that echoes louder than expected. They begin to feel the faint pressure of something unresolved. They recognize a shadow at the edge of their thoughts, a shadow carrying your name, your presence, your loyalty, your goodness. They try to look away, to distract themselves, to pretend it doesn't matter. But shadows stretch when someone runs from their own conscience. In time, the realization settles into their mind like a slow spreading light, revealing corners they kept hidden from themselves. They remember your kindness, the patience you offered even when it was not returned, the silent sacrifices you made, the trust you gave without hesitation. At the time, these things felt ordinary to them. They mistook your loyalty for weakness, your consistency for obligation, your emotional depth for something they could always revisit whenever it suited them. Only now do they understand that what they took for granted was actually a rare and extraordinary gift. The mind has an astonishing way of replaying moments differently once truth is allowed to enter. Scenes they once justified now appear cruel. Words they spoke with arrogance now sound empty. Choices they made out of selfishness now reveal their true cost. They see themselves more honestly than before, and the reflection is not easy to bear. They can no longer convince themselves that the betrayal was a moment of clarity. Instead, they recognize it as a moment of blindness. It was not strength that led them to hurt you. It was fear, confusion, immaturity, or a heart unwilling to acknowledge what was meant to be cherished. This internal confrontation becomes the beginning of their unraveling. The person who betrayed you starts to feel the weight of their own conscience pressing against them, urging them to acknowledge what they had refused to admit. And they begin to realize that betrayal is not simply an action, it is a revelation of character. In betraying someone who trusted them, they exposed a part of themselves they can no longer unsee. It becomes increasingly difficult for them to hide behind the facade they once relied upon. Regret becomes the lens through which they now view their actions. As the truth grows clearer, they find themselves questioning the reason behind their behavior. Why did they treat someone genuine with such careless disregard? Why did they push away the one person who cared without condition? Why did they sabotage something pure? These questions do not bring comfort, they bring an uncomfortable clarity. They discover that the person they betrayed was not the problem. The problem was within them, and that recognition is painful, because it strips away the illusions they created to protect their ego. This realization does not demand your presence to unfold. They do not need you to speak, confront, or remind them. The betrayal itself becomes their teacher. The silence becomes their instructor. Life has a way of making a person revisit their actions long after the moment has passed, and now they begin to understand that their betrayal was not a small misstep. It was a significant fracture that revealed their inability to value what was real. The weight of this truth grows heavier each day. They feel it when they wake up, when they go about their routine, when they interact with others. It appears in unexpected thoughts, in the emptiness they feel, in the discomfort that creeps in even during moments that should feel normal. Betrayal plants a seed, and for them, that seed has finally begun to bloom into regret. What they once believed they could walk away from now follows them. and what they thought they could forget now remembers them. The conscience they silenced for so long is speaking again, and this time they can no longer turn away. Regret does not rush into a person's life. It waits for the world around them to grow quiet. It is patient in a way that exposes the impatience of those who betray others. At first they believed their decisions were justified. They convinced themselves that walking away was strength, that hurting someone who cared was necessary, that replacing loyalty was freedom. In the beginning, the noise of life agrees with them. People distract them, routines keep them busy, and pride shields them like armor from the truth. But pride is thin protection. Noise eventually fades. People eventually leave. And when the world finally quiets down, regret steps forward, steady and uninvited. Illness becomes the turning point. All the excuses they once clung to begin to lose their power when their mind is not occupied by the noise they used as shelter. They begin to feel an unfamiliar emptiness during moments that once felt harmless. Waiting in line, lying in bed, sitting in silence after a long day, those small spaces become the places where truth sinks in. They can no longer outrun the memory of what they did to someone who showed them patience, softness, and sincerity. In the absence of noise, they now confront the sound of their own conscience. Distractions once served as their hiding place. They surrounded themselves with people who told them what they wanted to hear, not what they needed to confront. They filled their days with conversations, plans, laughter that wasn't real, and relationships that lacked depth. They believed these things could silence the whisper of guilt. But distraction is a temporary refuge, never a permanent escape. The mind is undefeated in remembering what the heart tries to deny. Eventually the laughter stops, feeling genuine. The friendships they leaned on start to feel hollow. The excitement fades quickly. Even the attention they once enjoyed becomes tiring, repetitive, and unsatisfying. In the quiet that follows, they begin to sense the ache of something unresolved, an ache tied to you. They remember the moments you tried to speak truth into their life, the times you offered understanding, the patience you extended, and the kindness you showed even when they didn't deserve it. They remember how they brushed off your loyalty as if it were common and easily replaceable. This is when regret grows louder, louder than any distraction they used to drown out their conscience. It begins as a subtle sting, but soon becomes a persistent weight. It whispers in their mind when they try to rest, reminding them of the sincerity they betrayed. It surfaces in unexpected moments, when they see someone with the same gentleness you once had, when a memory resurfaces without warning, when a situation mirrors the hurt they caused you. They start noticing how rare your loyalty was, how unconditional your heart had been, how honest your intentions were. And with every reminder, another layer of regret settles onto their shoulders. The regret tightens even more when the people they turn to fail them. They find themselves surrounded by relationships that lack the depth you offered. They discover that not everyone will be patient with their flaws, forgiving of their mistakes, or understanding of their fears. They realize that the acceptance they once felt in your presence is missing everywhere else. No amount of distraction can replace the comfort of knowing someone truly cared for them, and now, in silence, they understand how deeply they misjudge your value. As regret deepens, they begin to see the truth with painful clarity. You were not the burden, they were. You did not fail them, they failed you. The silence reveals their own immaturity, selfishness, and fear. The noise they once sought now feels suffocating because it no longer hides the truth. Instead, it reminds them of the emptiness left behind by their own decisions. Quiet moments turn into emotional awakenings. They finally recognize that they hurt someone who never deserved pain. They threw away something rare while chasing things that now feel meaningless. And while you have been healing, rebuilding, and finding your strength again, they have been slowly breaking under the weight of their own choices. Regret is no longer a distant possibility for them. It has become a constant companion. It sits with them in silence, reminding them of the day they betrayed a heart that only wished them well. And now, in the quiet moments they can no longer avoid, they finally understand the depth of what they lost. Understanding the rarity of your loyalty has become one of the heaviest realizations they now carry. At the time, they moved with a careless confidence, assuming that the kind of heart you offered could be found wherever they pleased. They believed your patience was ordinary, your forgiveness was expected, and your presence was guaranteed. They thought they had endless chances to mistreat your soul and still return whenever loneliness pressed against their door. Only now do they understand how wrong they were. Only now do they see that they did not simply lose a person. They lost the rare kind of love, friendship, or loyalty that many never encounter in their entire lifetime. People often walk blindly through life, mistaking rarity for routine. Something precious becomes invisible when someone grows comfortable with receiving it. That is what happened with you. You were constant. You were steady. You were soft in a world that teaches people to be hard. But because you held no conditions over them, they assumed your loyalty was effortless. They believed your presence was a default setting, not a deliberate choice. Yet every moment you offered understanding, every time you swallowed hurt, every time you saw the brokenness in them and still chose compassion, that was an act of rarity. That was not ordinary love. That was not common loyalty. That was a treasure disguised as everyday kindness. People who are not used to being loved well often mistake genuine care for something that can be replaced. They confuse familiarity with permanence. They assume patience means weakness. When someone like you enters their life, they fail to recognize the magnitude of the gift they've been given. They take it for granted because they have no reference point for what a rare heart looks like. Only when it disappears do they begin to understand that what they dismissed with ease is something others would protect fiercely. The realization comes to them in stages. At first, it feels like nostalgia, memories of your kindness replaying in their mind. Then it turns into comparison. They notice that others are not as patient, not as sincere, not as willing to understand their flaws. Eventually, the truth dawns on them like a bitter sunrise. They lost someone extraordinary, and the more they encounter the world without you, the more sharply this truth cuts. They begin to notice the difference in how others treat them. They encounter impatience where you once offered grace. They face judgment where you extended understanding. They receive shallow attention where you gave depth. Even conversations feel different now. Where your words carried warmth and compassion, the words of others feel cold, transactional, or self-serving. They never realized how deeply your presence softened their life until the softness was gone. Regrets grow sharper each time they recognize the contrast. They remember how you listened even when hurt, how you stayed when others would have walked away, how you forgave even when unappreciated. And now they meet people who mirror none of those qualities. They feel the sting of short tempers, the weight of indifference, the discomfort of being misunderstood. What once felt like freedom from your presence now feels like exile from the only person who ever understood them without needing explanations. Your loyalty becomes a distant echo in their mind, an ache that grows each time life hands them the same coldness they once handed to you. They realize that loyalty is not something money can buy or convenience can create. It is something born from a rare soul, and you were that rare soul. They didn't see it then, but they see it now through the lens of loss. This understanding does not bring comfort. It brings sorrow. They see your worth now with painful clarity. They see that the loyalty you offered was unmatched. They see that the connection they once found effortless is something they will struggle to find again. They realize that your love or your friendship, your support, your presence was not replaceable, and with each passing day, the awareness deepens. They traded something priceless for something temporary. They gambled with a rare soul and lost. What once felt ordinary to them has now become a memory that refuses to fade, a reminder of the one person who treated them with sincerity when they did not deserve it. And now that they finally recognize your rarity, they carry a truth that will not leave them. The loyalty they dismissed was the kind they will spend years trying to find again. Life has a remarkable way of returning to people the very energy they once unleashed into the world, not as punishment, but as a quiet revelation of truth. The person who betrayed you is beginning to feel this in ways they never anticipated. At first, they believed their choices would bring them clarity, relief, or even freedom. They thought walking away from you meant walking towards something better. They assumed that life would reward their decision, not expose it. But slowly, subtly, and steadily, the consequences have begun to take shape. And the outcomes mirror the wounds they once inflicted on you. What they once dismissed as your overreaction is now something they feel in their own relationships. They notice people pulling away from them without explanation. They feel unheard in moments when they desperately want understanding. They encounter betrayal in places they once trusted. This isn't coincidence, it is reflection. Life has woven a quiet symmetry, a delicate echo of the pain they created. They are now meeting versions of themselves through the actions of others, and they finally comprehend how deeply their choices once cut you. At the time, hurting you seemed easy. They believed you would simply heal and disappear into the background of their life while they moved forward untouched. But life refuses to let anyone remain untouched by the edges they themselves sharpened. The same emotional displacement they caused you, confusion, rejection, loneliness, has found its way back into their world. They feel the sting of uncertainty in conversations where they expected closeness. They feel the ache of being misunderstood by people they trusted. They feel the hollowness of giving their heart to someone who does not value it. They feel the weight of regret pressing against their chest, with every reminder of what they could have had with you. This reflection doesn't arrive as dramatic catastrophe. It arrives through quiet disappointments, friendships that suddenly feel unstable, relationships that crumble without clear reasons, trust that refuses to grow no matter how hard they try. They find themselves questioning why peace feels so distant, why connection feels fragile, why joy slips away faster than before. And while they search for explanations in others, their soul knows where this unraveling began. Life is not punishing them, it is teaching them, and the lesson is unmistakable. The emotions they dismissed in you were real. The wounds they caused were deeper than they understood. The patience you showed was far more valuable than their pride allowed them to see. Every instance in which someone now treats them with carelessness reflects the casual disregard they once showed you. Every moment they feel unseen mirrors how invisible you felt when you were trying to hold everything together. Every disappointment they now face carries the imprint of the disappointment they orchestrated in your life. As the consequences unfold, they begin to understand the weight of what loyalty truly means. They see that genuine hearts do not appear often, and when they do, they must be protected, not wounded. They realize that the chaos they now experience is not random. It is connected to the moment they chose to harm the very soul that would have protected them from this kind of turmoil. The world has become a reflection of their inner imbalance, and the peace they once took for granted has become a distant memory. It becomes increasingly clear to them that the path they chose after betraying you was not a path of liberation. It was a path of scattered pieces. The comfort they sought in others now feels conditional and unpredictable. The trust they place in people crumbles easily, as though life is whispering to them the truth they ignored. What you send into the lives of others will one day return to your own. This realization grows stronger each time they are let down by someone they believed would be different. They now experience the same heaviness you once carried, the same confusion, the same quiet tears in moments when no one else is watching. And while your healing has lifted you towards strength and renewal, their choices have led them into emotional storms they cannot escape. Life has gently placed them in the seat they once forced you to occupy, not out of cruelty, but out of truth. It is in this reflection that they finally understand what they never saw when you stood by their side. You were not weak for caring. You were not foolish for staying. You were not insignificant for loving deeply. You were strong, rare, and sincere. And the pain they now feel is the echo of the pain they once handed to you without hesitation. Life does not forget what the heart endures, and it always returns to teach what was refused in gentler lessons. They are learning now, not because you wished it, but because truth always circles back to its source. The weight of what they did to you has begun to settle into their life in ways they never expected. It is not loud, not dramatic, not explosive. It comes quietly, weaving itself into the small spaces of their thoughts, visiting them at moments when they least anticipate it. The burden of their betrayal does not strike like lightning. It grows like a slow, uninvited shadow. Every choice they made, every careless word, every moment of disregard begins to replay itself in their mind, not as distant memories, but as vivid reminders of who they chose to be. This burden becomes heavier because it is no longer something they can rationalize away. A person can convince themselves of many things, especially when pride is steering the wheel. They can justify actions that caused pain. They can create narratives that make them feel innocent. They can silence the voice within that warns them of truth. But conscience is not a defeated enemy. It rests, it waits, and then it returns stronger. That is what has begun to happen inside them. The betrayal they once brushed aside has turned into a weight that sits in their chest, making even ordinary days feel strangely heavy. They do not always know why their heart feels restless, but their soul does. Something within them is reminding them of the wound they caused. This burden becomes visible in the smallest moments. They feel it when they try to sleep and memories of your face, your voice, your goodness rise unexpectedly. They feel it when they encounter someone who treats them with the same coldness they once directed toward you. They feel it when they scroll through old messages, or when a quiet moment forces them to acknowledge what they lost. They even feel it when they try to laugh or enjoy themselves, because beneath the surface, something reminds them that joy, built on disregard for another's heart, cannot last. The betrayal they committed becomes a story they cannot rewrite. It becomes a scar they can feel, even if others cannot see it. They may not speak about it, but the weight is real. It is felt in the look that lingers too long when they think no one is watching. It is felt in the sighs they release when they remember what they once had, a person who cared deeply, who stayed loyal, who offered forgiveness, who asks for very little, yet gave so much. Losing someone like that is not something the soul forgets easily. The heart remembers what the mind tries to dismiss. They begin to recognize that the burden they carry is not just regret, it is the weight of their own unkindness. To admit that they hurt someone who showed them nothing but sincerity is a painful truth. It forces them to confront parts of themselves they avoided, their selfishness, their impulsiveness, their inability to value what was good. The betrayal becomes a mirror, showing them the version of themselves they now wish they had never been. Mirrors of truth are heavy things to hold. What makes this burden even heavier is the realization that they cannot undo what has been done. Apologies, even if spoken, cannot erase scars. Regret, even if deep, cannot rewind time. They begin to understand that betrayal is not just an act. It is a weight that attaches itself to the soul. It stays with them, shaping their interactions, influencing their thoughts, haunting their quiet hours. They carry the knowledge that they broke the trust of someone who would have never broken theirs. That realization alone becomes a storm inside them. The burden grows when they try to explain what they did to themselves. They struggle to justify their choices because honesty leaves them nowhere to hide. They know you deserved better. They know you cared genuinely. They know they wounded someone who offered nothing but good intentions, and that truth presses down on them because it reveals the difference between who they were and who they could have been. This weight does not lift easily. It does not fade with time. It becomes part of their inner landscape. It shapes their nights, their reflections, their quiet fears. And even if they pretend to move forward, the heaviness follows them like a shadow. They carry the memory of hurting a rare heart, and the soul never travels lightly once it understands the magnitude of what it has lost. The burden they now carry is not your responsibility. It is theirs alone, born from choices they believed would never matter. But choices matter. Hearts matter. Loyalty matters. And now the truth has settled. The pain they once handed to you has come back to rest inside them, heavier than they ever imagined. The realization that their actions cost them more than they ever imagined does not strike all at once. It unfolds slowly, like a curtain being drawn back inch by inch, revealing a truth they were never prepared to see. In the beginning, they believed they had lost nothing significant. They convinced themselves that walking away from you would create space for better things. They assumed your presence was replaceable. Your loyalty was common. Your love or friendship was something they could easily find again. But time has a way of revealing the true value of what someone walks away from. And now, with painful clarity, they are beginning to understand that what slipped from their hands was not just a person. It was a blessing they will not encounter twice. Only after losing you do they begin to recognize how deeply you anchored them. You were a source of stability, even when they did not see it. You were a quiet comfort, the kind of presence that makes chaos feel manageable simply by existing. They never realized that the peace they felt during conversations with you was not accidental. It was a reflection of your sincerity, your empathy, your emotional intelligence. Now, as they try to find the same grounding in others, they discover that most relationships lack the depth you brought so naturally. What they lost was not simply companionship. They lost someone who understood their unspoken fears, someone who read their silence with compassion, someone who forgave their flaws without making them feel small, someone who saw beyond the mask they presented to the world and still chose to stay. They now understand how rare it is to be truly seen by another person, and even rarer to be seen with kindness. That is the cost they never calculated, the loss of the one person who offered them a safe place to be imperfect. Life exposes this cost in subtle ways. They meet people who offer attention but not understanding, affection but not loyalty, presence but not depth. They encounter relationships that feel transactional, friendships that feel conditional, and conversations that lack the soulfulness they once took for granted with you. They now face confusion where you once brought clarity, doubt where you once brought reassurance, and disappointment where you once brought hope. The contrast is unmistakable. The loss becomes painfully visible in every hollow connection they attempt to build. The cost grows deeper as they begin to understand the emotional weight of your absence. They feel the silence you left behind, not as relief, but as an ache. They feel the emptiness of moments where your encouragement once lifted them. They feel the heaviness of decisions without your wisdom, your steadiness, your perspective. Losing someone who genuinely cared often reveals itself not through dramatic moments, but through small daily recognitions. The kind of loneliness that appears even in a crowded room. The way laughter feels thinner. The way joy feels incomplete. They start to replay all the moments when you extended grace while they responded with coldness. They remember the times you tried to communicate while they dismissed your feelings. They see now how much strength it took for you to remain loyal while they were careless. These memories are no longer just memories. They have become lessons, and each one comes with a cost. They now understand that the peace you brought into their life was something they contributed nothing toward, yet benefited from deeply. The greatest cost, however, is the realization that they cannot get you back, not as you were, not with the same trust, not with the same innocence. They may miss you, but missing someone is not the same as deserving them. They may ache for your presence, but longing does not erase betrayal. They may recognize your value now, but recognition does not heal the wound they created. This is the part that hurts them the most. The knowledge that they lost the best version of you, and that the version that remains no longer belongs to them. What they threw away was not just a relationship or connection. They lost the chance to grow beside someone patient enough to guide them. They lost the chance to be loved by someone who saw their potential, even when they hid from it. They lost the chance to be better. Because your presence brought out a version of them they now struggle to reach on their own. The cost is not measured in what they lost once. It is measured in what they continue to lose every day without you. With each passing moment they are reminded that the betrayal they committed did not simply break your trust. It broke something within them as well. And now, as they face the emptiness left behind, they understand too late that the greatest loss they ever experienced was losing the rare soul who would have stood by them through anything. Your healing became the quiet revelation they never expected. When they walked away, they imagined you would remain stuck in the place they left you, hurt, confused, questioning your worth, replaying their betrayal like a wound that would never close. They assumed their absence would diminish you. They believed their choices would define your path, weaken your heart, or stunt your growth. But healing has a way of reshaping the narrative. Instead of breaking you, the pain they caused became the very ground where you rebuilt yourself. And as you rose from what they shattered, something extraordinary happened. Your transformation began to expose their downfall. Healing does not announce itself loudly. It starts quietly, deep beneath the surface. It begins with a softer heart, a stronger spirit, a clearer mind. While they expected you to remain wounded, you slowly gathered the pieces of your soul with dignity and grace. You chose to understand the pain instead of becoming it. You chose to rise instead of collapse. Each step you took, whether small or trembling, became a declaration that their betrayal did not have the final word in your story. They did not expect your silence to become strength. They did not expect your distance to become protection. They did not expect your absence to become the mirror they could not escape. As you healed, the version of you they once knew began to fade. The person who tolerated their disregard, who made excuses for their behavior, who gave too much and received too little, that version evolved into someone wiser, sharper, stronger, and more self-aware. And in that change, they began to realize something painful. The loss was theirs, not yours. Your healing became a message they could feel even from a distance. Perhaps you chose not to speak to them again, but your silence carried a truth they could not hide from. Perhaps you no longer occupied space in their life, but your absence created a hollow they could not fill. As you healed, you radiated a confidence that unsettled their conscience. The strength you gained revealed the weakness in their choices. The wisdom you gained exposed the foolishness in their decisions. What was once hidden beneath the weight of heartbreak became visible through the clarity of growth. It is a strange experience for the betrayer to watch the person they wounded rise without them. At first they may try to dismiss your growth, pretend not to notice, act unaffected. But the soul is not easily fooled. They feel it. They feel it when your name crosses their mind unexpectedly. They feel it when they compare the peace they once found in you to the instability they now live with. They feel it when they realize that the person they underestimated has become someone unreachable, someone they no longer have access to, someone they no longer deserve. Your healing casts a light on their unresolved darkness. It confronts them with the truth that their choices did not break you but broke something within themselves. While you rose to a higher version of who you were meant to become, they remained entangled in the consequences of their actions. The more you flourished, the more they had to face the reality that they destroyed something valuable. Growth can be humbling, not just for the person experiencing it, but for the one who thought they had the power to prevent it. What they witness in your transformation is not revenge, it is revelation. They begin to see what they truly lost. They see the kindness they once dismissed. They see the loyalty they mistreated. They see the understanding they took for granted. They see the rare soul that walked away not out of anger, but out of self-respect. And the more they see, the deeper the ache settles into their chest. The beauty of your healing lies in its quiet power. You did not rise to prove a point. You rose because your spirit refused to remain in the shadow of their actions. You rose because pain refined you, not because betrayal defined you. And as your healing continues to reveal your resilience, it continues to expose their regret. Each step you take forward becomes a silent reminder of what they lost. Each day you grow stronger, they feel weaker in the memory of what they threw away. Your healing is not their punishment, but it is their awakening. It is the mirror that forces them to confront the truth they avoided for so long. Hurting you was the beginning of their own downfall, and watching you rise has become the chapter of the story they can never erase, no matter how deeply they regret the day they betrayed the one soul who would have stood by them through anything. The moment they betrayed you did not simply mark the end of a relationship or the breaking of trust, it marked the beginning of a quiet unraveling within their own soul. At the time they didn't feel it. The rush of pride, the illusion of control, the false confidence that they had made the right decision. All of it clouded the truth. They believed that hurting you would free them. They believed leaving you behind would lighten their path. They believed they were stepping into something better. But as time has revealed, that single choice became the moment their peace began to slip through their fingers, piece by piece, without them realizing what was happening. People often assume that betrayal is a wound carried only by the one who is hurt. But betrayal is a double-edged blade. One side cuts the innocent, and the other wounds the one who holds it. They felt powerful when they struck, but power gained at the cost of integrity never lasts. It shatters slowly, quietly in the silence of their own thoughts. They begin to feel the unease first as restlessness, then as regret, and eventually as a deep aching sense of loss they cannot name. In the days that followed their betrayal, they may have felt relief. They may have felt justified. They may have believed they escaped responsibility. But conscience has its own timing. It does not rush, but it does not forget. Slowly, the moments they pushed aside return in waves. They remember your loyalty. They remember your patience. They remember how deeply you cared. They remember how you stood by them when others would have left. And with that remembering comes a piercing awareness. They wronged someone who would have never wronged them. That truth alone becomes a weight heavier than the betrayal itself. Peace does not coexist with wrongdoing. Even if the world cannot see it, the soul does. The mind starts replaying scenes that once felt insignificant. The heart starts aching in places they didn't know were vulnerable. Sleepless nights become more frequent. They lie awake, wondering why something feels off, why their chest feels tight, why their spirit feels unsettled. Deep inside, they know it is tied to the moment they betrayed you, the moment they broke a bond that was built on sincerity, the moment they hurt a soul that had only ever wished them well. The consequences reveal themselves in other ways too. They become irritable without knowing why. They become easily disappointed. They feel emptiness even in the presence of others. They crave connection but cannot find the depth they once had with you. Every new relationship feels shallow. Every friendship feels temporary. Every conversation feels incomplete. They try to fill the void with distractions, but distractions can only numb, never heal. What they truly crave is the peace they once had in your presence, the peace they shattered with their own hands. Life has a way of returning lessons with sharp clarity. They begin to encounter situations that mirror the pain they caused you. Someone betrays their trust. Someone abandons them when they need support. Someone devalues them the way they once devalued you. Each experience becomes a mirror reflecting what they once inflicted on you. This is not karma seeking revenge. It is life revealing truth. They finally understand what you felt because now they feel it too. The absence of peace becomes a constant companion. They notice how your presence once softened their edges, calmed their mind, and steadied their heart. They notice how life has grown colder since you left. They notice how their choices have led them into loneliness, instability, and uncertainty. And the realization hits with full force. The day they betrayed you was the day they betrayed themselves. They didn't just lose you. They lost the version of themselves that was better because you were in their life. What torments them most is the awareness that some losses cannot be undone. They cannot undo the moment they broke your trust. They cannot erase the pain they caused. They cannot rewind time to choose differently. They cannot rebuild the bridge they burned. And as this truth settles deeper into their soul, the regret becomes louder than their pride. They finally understand what they refused to see before. Peace is not something you gain through escape. It is something you protect through honor, loyalty, and love. Their peace ended the moment they chose betrayal. And as life continues to unfold, they are beginning to accept that the greatest consequence of hurting you was not losing you. It was losing the peace that only a clean heart can carry. And now they walk through the world carrying a regret that whispers to them every day. They pushed away the one soul who would have stood by them forever. In the end, the story of their betrayal is not a story of your defeat, but a story of your becoming. What they meant to break became the very force that lifted you. What they meant to silence became the reason you found your true voice. What they meant to diminish became the soil where your strength grew roots. Their regret is not your victory, It is simply the truth unfolding as it always does. You did not need revenge, nor did you need to prove anything. Life carried the truth forward for you. Their heart now carries the weight of choices they once dismissed. Your heart carries the strength of someone who survived what was meant to destroy them. They walk with regret. You walk with renewal. They look back wishing they had chosen differently. You look forward knowing their absence was the doorway to a better future. Pain refined you, clarity strengthened you, and healing crowned you with a quiet dignity that no betrayal could erase. Let them face their own lessons. Let them wrestle with the truth they tried to escape. You are no longer bound to the moment they failed you. You are no longer shaped by their choices. You are shaped by the way you rose, gracefully, powerfully, silently. Your story continues, brighter and stronger, while their regret remains a shadow that follows them. They may never understand how deeply they wounded a rare soul, but you understand now how deeply you were meant to rise. And that rise is the final word.